Hey, so I want to talk about when actors and actresses get political. Um, Keeping within the bracket of film, I've just been to see Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Um, I'm one of those people that, so admittedly, I haven't read the book, but I always enjoyed the Harry Potter franchise, the Harry Potter series, and I really enjoyed this film. I thought it was very, very fantastic special effects. And this is an area where special effects when they're done in a very creative way, can be wonderful and can really, really enhance that cinema experience. Yeah, I just enjoyed it all around. I've not a single negative thing to say about it. Very pleased I went to go to see it. And yeah, just a very enjoyable film. I like the idea of a piece of the Potter universe being outside the UK and 90 years before the events of uh, the other Harry Potter films. Um, Spin-offs seem to be a thing in cinema these days with Rogue One. That's probably the next film I'm going to see. I'm not a massive, massive Star Wars fan, but just been thinking about it a bit recently with Carrie Fisher passing away and so on, and so I might go to see that. But anyway, if you haven't seen it, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, great film. Um, and one of my favorite actresses, Gemma Chan, made a brief appearance, so that was a pleasant surprise. I didn't know she was credited in the film until I recognized her. Anyway, I want to talk about when actors become political. Now, the context of this is that last night in the Golden Globes, Meryl Streep made an impassioned speech against Donald Trump. Um, and it's attracted a bit of debate. There's people who are passionately defending her and saying that what she's saying is true. And there's others that are saying that actors should keep politics off the podium. Um, my own position is somewhere in the middle. I don't agree that actors should always just keep their mouths shut and never ever talk about their political views. Um, it is true that actors are paid to act, and primarily they are entertainers. But they're also people like the rest of us, and they're entitled to their views. I mean, Meryl Streep's an American citizen. She's talking about the president elect of the United States. So, of course, she's entitled to her opinion. Now, whether it's appropriate or not is another matter in that particular context. One thing that is going to happen, and they definitely need to accept this, is he's going to be president. There's not going to be any recall at this point. There isn't going to be any electoral college turnover. Donald Trump is going to be the 45th president of the United States. Um, and I think it is better to accept it now and start to deal with it that way rather than just pretending it isn't going to happen. In terms of the speech itself, I didn't watch all of it. I caught bits of it, particularly the bit where she got quite emotional, describing how Donald Trump allegedly mocked a disabled reporter. Now, Mark Dice, well-known right-wing uh, blogger, YouTuber, whatever way best describes him, made a video and he made the point that that was taken out of context because that's a mannerism that Trump always uses. I don't really accept that. I think if Trump cannot control his own mannerisms, if he cannot understand how something comes across, then that is just another indication that he's not really fit to be president of the United States. But like I say, that is happening now. Um, One issue I take with Trump supporters is they always, always have excuses for him, and it's almost sometimes like they're almost like his parents, and the neighbours complaining about a naughty child. I mean, Kellyanne Conway, and I promise I won't derail going on to Trump about this, but it does relate to the video. It is always saying things like, "Can't you give him the benefit of the doubt? Don't listen to what comes out of his mouth." Well, that's clearly absurd. I mean, Donald Trump is a 70-year-old man, not a 14-year-old kid who isn't responsible for his own actions. And I apologize to 14-year-olds. There's many 14-year-olds who are a lot more mature than that. Um, so, it's a bit like the Brexit debate in the UK. It's going to happen. Donald Trump's going to be the next president. People should accept that. It's true that Clinton got more votes, but Trump won under the current system. However, Trump supporters also need to understand that Trump is inheriting a deeply divided country, and simply mocking them as losers, i.e., the other side is losers and so on, isn't doing a great deal to build bridges. It's going to be a lot like, when Obama was in office for 8 years, he got blamed for everything. The Republicans blamed him for everything. Now, when Bush was in office, the Democrats blamed him for everything, or left wingers blame Bush for everything, right wingers blame Obama for everything. What people generally need to understand is that the president doesn't have absolute power. So, things that go wrong over the next 4 years, Trump will certainly be partly culpable or largely culpable, given the cabinet appointments he's been making and so on. But it wouldn't be fair to blame Trump for everything. Um, just like it wouldn't be fair or it isn't fair to blame Obama for everything and so on. By the way, stay tuned because I'm going to make a video very soon about Obama's legacy, in my opinion. Anyway, sorry I derailed a little bit there, but I think those things had to be said. But about acting, yeah, so actors are paid to be entertainers first and foremost. That is absolutely true. But they are entitled to their opinion. I've heard similar arguments made about people of faith. For example, Church of England ministers here in the UK, some people say, oh, they should not be allowed a view. Well, that's nonsense. Everyone is allowed a view. That's the whole point of democracy and freedom of expression. Everyone is allowed a view. It doesn't matter if it's an anonymous person on the minimum wage or a multimillionaire business owner. Everyone is allowed a view. And that's one of the beautiful things about democracy. Or at least that's the way it should be. Um, on that point, I saw an interesting debate with Sanders and a small business owner, Bernie Sanders and a small business owner. So that's again democracy in action. Anyway, I think what does irritate people about actors. So, well, firstly, I saw a Christian blogger was attacking Meryl Streep for the hypocrisy of Hollywood and saying that Hollywood are the real bullies and hypocrites because they're always mocking people of faith. I think there's some truth in that, and I do believe that in Hollywood it is far easier to mock Christianity than any other religion. I think that's true. What I don't accept is this ridiculous notion that Christians are persecuted in the United States. Christians are persecuted in Iraq, in other parts of the Middle East. They're not persecuted in the United States. Nevertheless, I do think there are Hollywood producers that would much sooner do a caricature of Jesus than the Prophet Muhammad, and I think the reason's obvious, um, because there's a level of sensitivity that you just don't get in that is, I think, basically Christianity. Christians are mocked all the time. That's just the truth. Sometimes they deserve to be mocked. Certain Christians don't do themselves any favors. Um, that is just sticking to the particular point of that editorial that I came across. Um, I think there's some truth in that. Hollywood has always been seen as a shallow sort of place. Many actors themselves often complain about it. John Cusack, Mark Wahlberg have both um, said what a snobby sort of place it was, not in those exact words, but they have alluded to that. Um, I think what I think what actors need to remember is that they are privileged people. I'm talking about the top actors. I'm not talking about struggling actors. Top Hollywood actors are in a position of privilege. Now, to be fair, a lot of actors do a lot of humanitarian work. They do a lot of charity work. So it wouldn't be quite fair to categorize all actors as kind of spoilt brats. That isn't fair. For the most part, these people work very hard. They rehearse long hours, sometimes in very testing conditions, as Leonardo DiCaprio showed. And they also have to put up with a pressure of fame that other public figures don't. I mean, certainly politicians and others don't have to put up with the level of paparazzi intrusion. That's one area where I have a lot of sympathy with actors and actresses. But one thing I don't like is when actors sometimes pontificate. And it's one thing just sharing your political opinion, but it's quite another looking like you're preaching it. And my response to that would be, well, if you're really that passionate, then run for office. Ronald Reagan done it, so it's very plausible. Um, I just think that people get a bit tired of it. If they're paying to watch a film or to watch an award ceremony, then it just becomes a political event. I think that can polarize people. Now, there is general knowledge that Hollywood is quite left wing overall, and it's definitely more pro democratic. But so it's not a huge mystery, but I do think it could get a little bit tiresome when it looks like actors are preaching. So I think they have to be careful with that. By all means, they can voice their views, but I think they have to be careful not to look like they're telling other people how to think. And sometimes they give the impression, and perhaps it's a dramatic side coming through, that they get so enthusiastic. Now, I'm not accusing Meryl Streep of being insincere. I think she was genuinely moved by what she was talking about, but they just have to remember that first and foremost they are entertainers. They're not political campaigners. They might well be political campaigners on the side, but first and foremost they're entertainers. Likewise, and this sort of relates, I have very little time for actors complaining about their lot. Um, I appreciate acting isn't an easy industry. I appreciate that there's competition, and sometimes actors need to take roles that they don't like. But the fact of the matter is, most endeavors in life, we have to make certain sacrifices or do certain things that we don't like. In the world of sport, do you think world title boxers get all the glamour and all the attention and all the fame and all the glory just like that? No, the vast majority of them have to work through uh, fights where they're barely going to be recognized unless they're an Olympian. In politics, politicians have to work their way up. They have to fight by elections. In business, it's the same. In every endeavor in life, it's a struggle. So, at least that would be the most egalitarian way to look at it. There is corruption, and sometimes people get a foot through the door when they shouldn't. That's all I'm going to say. But I don't have much time for actors complaining about their lot in life when they're on six or seven figures. That's something I don't have much time for, and that's a general rule actually. I don't have time for anyone complaining about their life if they're on seven figures. I'm not talking about specific things. Like if they're complaining about paparazzi intrusion, that I'm sympathetic to. But if they're just complaining in general, um, yeah, I lose all sympathy. Like if they're on seven figures and they complain they don't get exactly the roles they want, well, just be grateful for what you have. Because most people would never see that sort of financial comfort. They just won't. So I do think actors at that level need to be grateful for what they have, and they need to be always aware of that. I'm not saying they should. They don't deserve to enjoy it. I'm not. Like I say, they work very hard for this, but they should just know that it is a privileged position. This also related to politics. I get somewhat irritated when actors always try to, like, they speak with a chip on their shoulder. Oh, I didn't get that role because I'm black. I didn't get that role because I'm a woman. And there always seems to be some agenda. And I'm thinking, well, okay, maybe these issues could be discussed, but you have to make such a big public thing about them. Why not just have a private word with the producer or the director? I just, I know not everyone will agree with me on this, but sometimes I think there's certain actors who are a little bit childish. If they don't get exactly their own way, they play the victim. Um, whether it's because they're going to cry racism or they're going to cry sexism. The way I see it is producers and directors have a certain, they have a script in their hands. They need a certain set of actors, and they're going to have people in their mind. Now, if I've read a script and I read about certain types of actors, of course I'm going to look for actors that fit that role. I'm going to look for people who look like the characters they're going to play. And of course that means a certain degree of selection. So I don't agree with this sort of trend that we're seeing. I mean, it was with the Oscars so white nonsense last year, and I am very skeptical of that. I've made my views clear on that one. Um, but it's this idea of people having a chip on their shoulder when they're in a position of privilege. I have very little time for that. Um, So I do think if you have been fortunate enough in life to break through with your endeavor, firstly, well done, because I know in most cases they've worked hard for it. And also, thank you. If I was speaking to actors, I would say thank you. You're entertainers. You provide us with escapism. But that is just the point. When people go to the cinema or when they watch an awards ceremony, it's escapism, it's entertainment. They don't want to listen to people preaching either about politics in general or about how hard things are for poor actors. I think it's something that really, and then it gives a negative stereotype that all actors are spoiled brats, which isn't fair because they're not. But that's what it does. It's a bit like in the UK, footballers have a very bad reputation for being spoiled playboys who are on millions per week and they give nothing back. Does that mean all footballers are bad people? Of course not. There will be footballers who do work for charity and they're decent people and they know that they're in a privileged position. But I take the view that if some people in a particular industry give that industry a bad name with their antics, then others in the industry should at the very least call them out on it. Now, to be fair, I believe Mark Wahlberg did recently. He said actors should stop. Well, I'm not going to quote him because I'll make the wrong quote, but he said something connected with this that people are tired of hearing actors pontificate. And I agree with him. Um, actors are entertainers, and and that's what they do, and they're great at it. We should, as a public, we should be grateful for what they offer, but in turn, they should be grateful for the privileged lives that they do have. And with that, I guess, I guess that's the other side of it. Actors might argue, well, because I have a privilege, if I feel I'm giving something back by campaigning. The only thing I would say is it's okay campaigning, but maybe an award ceremony is not the right time to do it. So why isn't Meryl Streep run for office? Or why isn't she just campaign outside that? I think award ceremony is probably the wrong time to do it. That's just my opinion. Anyway, I spoke for a while here. Let me know your thoughts. In conclusion, summed up, I like actors. They're entertainers. They help us to escape from all the stresses in life. But I do think if you are a top actor, or even if you're not at the very top, you're not like an AA lister, but you're doing pretty well, and you're reasonably well off, just please don't complain. Understand that not everyone is in such a comfortable position. And this especially applies to actors who have really struggled at the bottom and worked their way up. They should empathize and understand that they've got there. That's great, wonderful. And like I say, this applies to any walk of life. It's why I don't have much time for Floyd Mayweather, um, who is arguably the greatest pound for pound fighter of modern times. The reason I don't have much time for him, and I'll make this very brief because it's not directly related to the video. The reason I don't have much time for him is he flaunts his massive wealth around like it's meaningless. Um, and from what I see, he gives very little back. I don't see Mayweather doing a great deal of charity work or anything like that. It's his money, but I just don't have time for that attitude. I think if you're in a position of privilege, regardless of how hard you've worked to get there, you should appreciate that because the vast majority of people aren't in that position.